41 seedlings out of 42. That is how many made it through spring in one of my seed trays last year, while the tray sitting right beside it on the same shelf. Same seed, same soil, same water. Lost 11 little plants to a fungus before they ever saw the garden. The difference between those two trays cost me about $4 at the grocery store, and there is a decent chance it is sitting in your spice cabinet right now. Plain ground cinnamon. Now I know exactly how that sounds. I did not believe it either, and that is why I ran it through my side-by-side test beds for 3 full seasons before I ever said one word about it on this channel. Today, I'm going to give you 10 tested reasons to put cinnamon to work on your crops with the real numbers from my own backyard. But stay with me all the way to the end, because whether cinnamon works for you or does absolutely nothing comes down to one fact about the jar you buy. And it is the exact opposite of what you would guess. I'm Steve Calloway. I have been growing food in the same Midwest backyard for more than 20 years, running side-by-side test beds and writing down what actually happened. My first garden was a jungle of green that gave me about a dozen tomatoes all summer. My wife Karen keeps the harvest log these days, and the numbers in that log are the only reason anything makes it into these videos. Before we get to reason number 1, you need to know what cinnamon actually is, because that explains everything that follows. Cinnamon is the ground up inner bark of a tropical tree. That bark carries a natural oil called cinnamaldehyde, and the tree makes that oil for one purpose. It is the tree's own defense against fungus and boring insects. So when you shake cinnamon onto your soil, you are not adding a fertilizer. You are borrowing a fungicide that a tree spent millions of years perfecting. It will not feed your plants one bit, and anybody who tells you it will is selling you something. What it does, and does well, is fight fungus and confuse certain pests. That is the whole trick. And hold on to the question of which cinnamon to buy, the cheap store brand or the fancy jar, because the answer is coming at the end, and it is the part almost everybody gets wrong. Reason number 1, it stops damping off in your seedlings. Damping off is the disease that took those 11 seedlings I told you about. A fungus that lives in damp seed starting mix attacks the stem right at the soil line, and a perfectly green seedling just folds over one morning like somebody cut it. Once it starts in a tray, it spreads fast. The fix is simple. After you sow your seeds, dust a light coating of cinnamon across the whole surface of the seed starting mix. Light means light like sugar on toast, not a blanket. The cinnamaldehyde sits right in the zone where that fungus does its damage. And in my trays, it turned an every spring problem into almost no problem at all. 41 out of 42. The garden doesn't lie. Now, everything I'm showing you today is one piece of a bigger system, and I wrote that whole system down day by day in a book called Steve's 30-Day Maximum Yield Protocol. It is the exact 30-day routine I follow in my own backyard to roughly double what every plant produces, written out for home gardeners who want significantly more food from the space they already have. No extra square footage, no expensive equipment, and it works the same in raised beds, in-ground rows, and containers. 115 pages starting with soil preparation and running all the way through harvest, including the Big 7 yield killers, which is the checklist I use to find what is quietly holding a garden back. It is $17 right now, marked down from $47, and considering my garden pays that back in about 1 week of tomatoes, the math takes care of itself. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you're watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. All right, back out to the seed shelf because reason number 2 lives in the same trays. Reason number 2, it knocks down fungus gnats. If you start seeds indoors, you have met these little pests, the tiny black flies that drift up off your potting soil every time you water. The flies themselves are just annoying. The real damage comes from their larvae down in the soil, which chew on tender young roots. Those larvae feed mostly on fungus growing in constantly damp potting mix. Take away the fungus and you take away their food. A light dusting of cinnamon on the soil, surface of your seed trays and houseplant pots does exactly that. In my seed room, I dust the trays once at sowing and once more about 2 weeks later, and the gnat clouds that used to hang around my grow lights every February are mostly gone. It will not wipe out a heavy infestation overnight, but it starves the next generation, and that is how you win with these things. That handles your indoor trouble, but it leaves you with a pest that marches in from outside. Reason number 3. It turns ants away from your raised beds. Ants in the vegetable garden are a mixed bag. A few are harmless, but ant colonies also farm aphids the way we farm cattle, carrying them onto your beans and peppers and protecting them while they suck the plants dry. Ants navigate by scent trails, and strong cinnamon oil scrambles those trails completely. I run a line of cinnamon about a ½ inch wide right along the top edge of the wooden frame on my raised beds where I see ant traffic. That is a ½ inch wide, a solid unbroken line, because ants will find a gap the way water finds a crack. In my tests, it does not kill the colony, and I want to be straight with you about that. It reroots them. Most seasons, rerooting is all you need, because an ant highway that skips your bed is an aphid problem you never have. Now, here is where cinnamon moves from the pests to the plants themselves. Reason number 4. It seals pruning cuts on your tomatoes. If you have watched this channel for a while, you know I prune my tomatoes hard, because feeding fruit instead of foliage is one of the biggest yield moves there is. But every cut you make on a tomato stem is an open wound, and open wounds in a humid July are an invitation to fungal spores. So I keep a small jar of cinnamon right in my garden apron. After I prune, I press a pinch of dry cinnamon onto each fresh cut, especially the big cuts on the main stem. It dries the wound faster and coats it with that antifungal oil while the plant seals itself. Since I started doing this, the stem rot I used to see creep into pruning wounds during wet summers has all but disappeared from my beds. Costs about $0.01 a plant. I tested this myself, and I will not prune without it now. And that habit led me straight into reason number 5, which is my favorite one on this whole list. Reason number 5. It protects cuttings while they root. A lot of you have asked how I multiply my rosemary, my sage, and my tomato suckers into free plants. The honest answer is that most cuttings do not die because they fail to root. They die because rot gets to the stem before the roots get going. 2 springs ago, I ran the test. 20 rosemary cuttings, all cut the same morning from the same mother plant. 10 went straight into damp potting mix. 10 got their cut ends dipped in water and then rolled in cinnamon first. Same tray, same window, same watering. 8 weeks later, the plain cuttings gave me 9 rooted plants. The cinnamon cuttings gave me 16. That is 16 against 9. Same plant, same weather, and the only difference was a 4-cent dusting of spice. Cinnamon is not a rooting hormone, and I'm not going to pretend it is. It is a bodyguard. It holds the rot off long enough for the cutting to do what cuttings naturally do. Same space, same effort, a completely different result. Now remember what I told you at the start, that the jar you buy decides whether any of this works. We are getting closer to that answer. And reason number 6 is where it starts to matter most. Reason number 6, it slows down powdery mildew. Every squash and cucumber grower knows the white, dusty film that shows up on the leaves in late July and spreads until the plant looks like it was rolled in flour. Powdery mildew is a fungus, and cinnamaldehyde fights fungus, so I put it to the test on my zucchini 3 summers running. I want to give you the honest result, not the exciting one. A cinnamon treatment, either dusted on damp morning leaves or steeped in warm water overnight, strained and sprayed, slowed the spread noticeably on the treated plants. It bought my zucchini an extra 3 to 4 weeks of strong production compared to the untreated plant in the next row. What it did not do is cure it. Leaves that were already white stayed white, so use it early at the first few spots and reapply after every rain. A slowdown that buys you a month of squash is worth $4. A miracle cure is not on the menu from cinnamon or from anything else in a spray bottle. So that is the leaves. Now let me show you the soil, because the soil is where most folks first notice they have a fungus problem at all. Reason number 7, it clears up soil mold and mushrooms in your containers. That white or greenish fuzz that blooms across the top of potting soil and those little brown mushrooms that pop up in containers and mulch after a wet week, are both fungus feeding on organic matter. Mostly they are harmless to a full-grown plant, but they tell you the surface is staying too wet. And around seedlings, they are bad company. Scrape off what you can see, let the surface dry for a day, then dust the whole soil surface lightly with cinnamon. In my container tomatoes and my seed trays, one treatment usually keeps the surface clean for weeks. Pair it with watering from the bottom instead of the top, and the problem generally stays gone. 2 fixes, 10 minutes, $0 beyond the spice you already own. Once your growing soil is handled, the next part protects the harvest you have not even planted yet. Reason number 8, it protects your saved seeds in storage. If you save seed from your best tomatoes and beans every fall, like I do, your biggest winter enemy is not cold, it is moisture, and the mold that follows it into the envelope. A whole season of careful selection can turn fuzzy and worthless in one damp January. So along with keeping my seeds in paper envelopes inside a jar, I add 1 small pinch of cinnamon to each envelope before it gets sealed up for winter. That is 1 pinch, not a spoonful, because you want the antifungal oil in the air of that envelope, not a coating that could slow germination. Since I started, Karen's log shows my spring germination on saved seed running strong and steady, and I have not lost an envelope to mold in years. Cheap insurance for seeds you cannot buy back. Now for the 2-legged and 4-legged troublemakers, because reason number 9 is the one folks ask me about at the fence. Reason number 9, it discourages the diggers. Squirrels and chipmunks treat a freshly planted raised bed like a treasure map. Soft soil says something worth digging is buried here. Their noses run their whole operation, and a strong dusting of cinnamon over a fresh planting scrambles the smell picture enough that most of them move along to easier ground. I am going to be straight with you again. This is a discouragement, not a fence. It washes down in a good rain and needs redusting, and it will do absolutely nothing about a hungry deer. But for the 2 weeks after planting, which is exactly when digging does its worst damage, a 50-cent dusting has saved more of my direct sown beans and fresh transplants than any gadget I ever bought. And that brings us to reason number 10, which protects the single biggest planting investment in my spring garden. Reason number 10, it seals cut seed potatoes. If you grow potatoes, you know the routine of cutting big seed potatoes into chunks so every chunk has an eye or two. Every one of those cuts is a wet, sugary, wide-open face going down into cold, damp, fungus-filled spring soil. That is why so many folks plant 20 pieces and see 13 plants. Before planting, I let my cut pieces air dry for a day, and then I press each cut face into a shallow dish of cinnamon until it is coated. The spice dries and seals the wound and holds the rot off until the piece sprouts. In my beds, that took my seed piece survival from about 8 in 10 up to nearly every single piece, on a crop where every lost piece is 3 to 5 pounds of potatoes you never dig. That little dish of spice earns its keep better than anything else on this list. And now the part I promised you at the very start, because none of these 10 reasons will do a thing for you if you buy the wrong jar. Walk down the spice aisle and you will see 2 kinds of cinnamon. The cheap store brand, usually $4 or $5, and the fancy jar labeled Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes called true cinnamon, often $10 or $12. Every instinct you have says the expensive true cinnamon must be the strong one. In the garden, it is exactly backwards. The cheap jar is almost always cassia cinnamon, grown mostly in Indonesia and Vietnam. And cassia bark is loaded with cinnamaldehyde. That is the antifungal oil doing every job we just covered. And cassia carries a great deal more of it than Ceylon does. Ceylon is prized by bakers precisely because it is mild and delicate. Mild and delicate is wonderful in a snickerdoodle and useless against a fungus. So the $4 jar is the stronger medicine, and the $12 jar is the weaker one. One more thing while you have that cheap jar in hand. Apply it dry. The oil in cinnamon does not dissolve in water, so dust it on and let it sit. And after a hard rain outdoors, dust again. Dry, light, and repeated beats, wet and heavy every time. That one fact about the jar is the difference between the folks who swear by cinnamon and the folks who swear it is nonsense. The garden doesn't lie. It rewards the system, not the guesswork. And that is exactly the kind of thing the whole protocol is built on. Tested, cheap, and written out day by day so you can just follow along. Steve's 30-day maximum yield protocol takes everything I've learned from 20 years of side-by-side beds and turns it into one 30-day routine. From soil preparation through harvest, including feeding for fruit instead of foliage, and the strategic pruning that feels wrong but multiplies production. $17 down from $47, and one saved crop pays for it several times over. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you're watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So that is 10 tested jobs for one $4 jar of cassia cinnamon, from the seed tray to the potato bed. If you run this test in your own beds, come back and tell me the before and after. I read every single one. Next time, I am going to show you the $2 kitchen fix I use on blossom end rot, those ugly black bottoms on your tomatoes, and why the calcium spray at the garden center almost never solves it. Get out there and get your hands dirty, and I'll see you in the garden.